Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wild Weather Phenomenon presentation here. Thanks to Rod Shawley for having us at this convention here, talking about all sorts of fun stuff. We're going to jump right into it here, talking, of course, about weather, but also some astronomy out there. I'm going to start with talk about some of the major planets you will see in the night sky and how they can be pretty confusing and certainly possibly confused for some UFOs. We're going to look at space weather phenomena like auroras and other topics, interesting atmospheric phenomena like mega cryometers. That's a fun one. And also some extreme weather that I find particularly interesting. So we'll start with the planets here. Basically, we're going to talk about the major planets you can see from Earth, or the ones that are closest to us: Venus and Mars, but also Jupiter and Saturn. Very large planets, reflect a lot of sunlight, so they're quite bright in the night sky. The planets are brightest during their oppositions, especially the ones outside of our orbit, like Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So an opposition is basically when the Earth is right between the sun and the planet itself. So that's when they tend to be the largest and brightest in the night sky. So let's take a look back here. In 2016, we had Mars that was extremely bright for a time. You can see here on May 22nd, that's when we had our opposition, when Mars was as bright as it gets in the night sky. It really dominated things out there last year, but it has since faded away. It's very dim now, but just wait. 2018, I have circled the date. Look at that size. That's how big Mars will look compared to how it looked in 2016. So it was very bright back in 2016, but it will be even brighter this upcoming year. So that'll be a fun one to see out there. This is the brightest it will be since 2003. Doesn't sound like a long time, but that 2003 event was as bright as Mars has been in 60,000 years. So we are certainly going to be enjoying a treat in the form of Mars over the upcoming year. Another fun one, this is probably my favorite planet to look at in the night sky, is Jupiter. It's in the sky much of the night, simply because it's outside of the Earth's orbit. It is present in the night sky in some cases throughout the entire night, especially during opposition. The moons are easy to see. It's a great target for amateur astronomers. So here is a great shot. Late last year, we had Jupiter right next to the moon here, and draw your attention to the upper left side of the screen here. You can see Jupiter, but also the Galilean moons discovered by Galileo back in the 1600s. They are large moons, each as big, if not bigger, than our own moon. So very great target. You can get this kind of view through a simple pair of binoculars. Very cool target to see out there. Also, we have Venus. Venus is the brightest planet. It is shrouded in clouds. Those clouds reflect a lot of sunlight. The problem with Venus is you can only see it for a short amount of time, basically right before sunrise or right after sunset. It is the brightest object in the night sky besides the moon. But again, you don't see it very often, and it tends to hover low on the horizon. It is striking when you see it, especially in the evening sky. If you're not an early riser, you won't see Venus for quite some time. And then once it becomes an evening planet appearance again, then it will be very bright out there. So really catches some people by surprise, often mistaken for a UFO. We talked to Stan Gordon earlier today, and he can certainly verify that there's been many bogus calls for UFOs when it was in fact just a very bright Venus. But it's pretty cool. Venus, even though it is quite bright, it's usually just a crescent because it is between us and the sun. We usually don't see the entire disk of Venus illuminated as we see it. So here's a good view of what it looks like through binoculars or a small telescope. Earlier in 2017, Venus shifted from a evening star, if you will, to a morning star, and in that process, it went very close to the sun and became a thinner and thinner crescent. And here is right before it slipped to the other side of the sun, very thin crescent, fingernail-like there by March 19th. But again, even though it was a very thin crescent, it was still pretty bright out there. Upcoming pre-dawn planet show, just in a little over a month here, we'll have Venus, Mars, and Mercury lining up together. Mercury, a hard one to see here. It will be quite some distance away from the sun, so again, it's very hard to see because it's not in the sky very long at all, and the sun usually washes it out. Happens to be a very thin crescent moon on September 17th, so it should be a nice show, good for photographers out there. All right, I'm going to hop right into some good stuff here. The 2017 solar eclipse, the first total solar eclipse across the lower 48 since 1979. So we haven't had a complete solar eclipse. We've had an annual eclipse, but not a total solar blackout eclipse, if you will, since 1979. So most folks have not seen this in their lifetime. Also, it's the first one to go from the Pacific to Atlantic unbroken totality in 99 years. We'll take a look at that 1918 map here at the end. But here is the path of the eclipse, U.S. right smack dab in the middle. This is the Great American Eclipse. Cool graphic here done by Al Blasco, our graphic artist here at AccuWeather. Everybody in the lower 48 gets to see an eclipse. We'll have a partial eclipse, obviously, and of course the path of totality, but even folks down in northern Maine and South Texas will see 50% of the sun obscured by the moon. So if you have a pair of eclipse glasses, you'll be able to see that happening, or you can just cut a hole in a piece of paper here. So I'm going to show the first of a few movies here. Just bear with me while I load up this movie. This is pretty cool. This is how the eclipse will look from Pennsylvania. Draw your attention to the clock here. And here's the path of totality. So we're getting past the 2 o'clock hour towards the 3 o'clock hour. That's when the sun will really be blocked out by the moon. In Johnstown, it's about nearly 80% complete blockage by the sun, a little less the further north and east you are across the great state of Pennsylvania. So some good stuff there. So moving along here, here's a zoom-in shot of what it will look like from Johnstown at about 2:40 p.m. on August 21st. It's not just the sun blocking out, the moon blocking out the sun, but it's also what you will see. Some stars will appear. If you're in the path of totality, I can't promise you'll see stars in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if we'll be able to or not. We will dim the sun quite a bit. Not sure it's going to be enough to see some of the planets. Maybe Venus. That might be your best target here in Pennsylvania. But in the path of totality, we'll see all these planets show up for a matter of minutes in the sky, and of course a few stars as well. So keep this map in mind as you're checking out the eclipse coming up. Here's my beautiful face, and yeah, that's a joke. Certainly not beautiful. But anyway, we're looking at cloud cover climatology for the eclipse. Easy for me to say. Basically, the blue shade is where it tends to be clearer, and the more yellow and red you see, the more likely it is to have cloud cover. And the place I picked there in Clemson, South Carolina, is a right square in the highest cloud cover climatology across the path of the eclipse. So hopefully things work out for me. I wanted to show you this image here. We are looking at the last several years of eclipses. I should say August 21st sky cover. So here we are, if you will, going back to 1996. Year by year here, we're looking at what the satellite picture looked like on August 21st. You can see how the western states tend to be mostly clear. I mean, even the southeast is pretty clear. I mean, yeah, we get a lot of clouds in the southeast, but it's usually not a completely overcast day. So August is a pretty good time for an eclipse here. So I'll let that loop through one more time for you guys here, starting in 1996. Each image here is another year. So here we go, 2002, 2003, 2004. So while the west is certainly most likely to have clear sky, you can even have some clouds out there by late August here. So it's going back into the presentation here. We'll just move right along. Okay, this is a funny graphic here. Here's the path of the eclipse, all the counties it goes through, and it's how they voted in the past election, if that's something that interests you. Here is our AccuWeather cloud cover forecast. We're looking at a lot of sunshine across the path of the eclipse. This forecast is about 18 days out, so certainly I take this with a grain of salt. This is more or less a best-case scenario with clear skies almost from coast to coast, so fingers crossed this one works out, but that'll be subject to change for sure. Otherwise, here is the path of the last coast-to-coast solar eclipse. This was 1918. We had an eclipse from western Washington right through Florida. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some more space phenomenon. That certainly can be confused with UFOs, but also quite startling, especially when you get an awesome fireball like this. This is a Perseid meteor captured by Ron Shawley. Perseid's notorious for bright fireballs and also leaving persistent trails, or more specifically called trains, an ionized train of excited atoms, if you will, in the atmosphere that are just rattled by these incoming meteors that are traveling between 50 and 100,000 miles per hour. Now, here is a cool video. We're going to take a minute to watch this. This was this past year in 2016 in Arizona. Very bright fireball showed up here in the pre-dawn hours, obviously pitch black, as you can see, and it lit up the entire landscape, as you can see in this video. Here's a slow motion vantage point of the same video. Then we're going to get a couple other views of the same meteor. A lot of people had security cameras rolling in southern Arizona. These are mostly near Tucson, I believe, here. So here's a couple other images of that. I'll let this play for a few minutes. You can see how the sky lights up like daytime for a few seconds there. This is my favorite here. Watch the mountains here. Oh, that is so cool. Love that. So you can certainly take a look at this after the fact and watch that entire video if you want. So we're going to keep moving on here. Meteor terminology. A meteor is simply a rock or a chunk of metal in space that enters the atmosphere. Before it enters the atmosphere, it's called a meteoroid, or if it's big enough, an asteroid. And after it hits the ground, it's called a meteorite. So we have a meteor and a fireball and a bolide. A fireball is a bright meteor between the brightness of Venus and the moon. And a bolide is brighter than that. It's between the brightness of the moon and the sun. And we even have a super bolide, which is a meteor that can be brighter than the sun. And if you're wondering, we did have one of those recently. A couple of shots of cool fireballs here. This happened to be a Taurid fireball, November meteor shower here that was seen out over the Columbia River Gorge in Washington. Really cool stuff here. Now, this is my favorite, Chelyabinsk meteor in 2013. Stunning video here. We'll take a look. Here it is exploding overhead, sending out a shockwave, blowing out tens of thousands of windows and injuring, unfortunately, a lot of people because they are drawn to the window by this bright object, and the shockwave is delayed. But when it got there, boy, it certainly did some damage. So let's take a look at this video here, if you will, and back it up here for a second. Just bear with me for a minute. And it just happens to be Wikipedia has one of the most awesome videos of this event, so I'm just going to let it play here. Enjoy this little show we have. Once we pull up to a stop here, we'll be able to see the meteor cruising across the sky. It comes left to right. This is real time. So you can see how it's slowing down. It's apparent that it's hit the atmosphere and really slowed down quite a bit. Lower levels of the atmosphere left a very long smoke trail. And, of course, you could see the sky was even on fire there for a few seconds. So everybody's starting to walk around like, boy, what the heck was that? So that was sure stunning. So we're going to continue for a few minutes. Then I'll have to take a break, and I'll continue with part 2 of our seminar. Quickly here, we're going to talk about the Perseids meteor shower coming up this coming weekend. Meteor shower caused by a comet that orbits only once every 133 years, but it leaves a lot of debris in its wake. It's the biggest object that approaches Earth, and some folks have speculated that this is our biggest threat to mankind, if you will. This object is at least 6 miles across, and it's the largest object that passes so close to Earth on a regular basis, if you consider 133 years to be a regular basis. So it goes 60 kilometers per second, and if it were to strike Earth, it would be 27 times more powerful than the comet impact that caused the dinosaur extinction. So anyway, the Perseids peak Friday night, and you should even be able to see Saturday night meteors. You want to catch them early, as the moon will be rising around 11 o'clock on Friday night, midnight Saturday night, but you'll be able to see bright meteors throughout the night. Again, we'll take a break here, and we'll come back here in a minute.